So, hi everyone again. Right now it's recording, right? Yeah. Hi everyone again. We're going to be talking about understanding international student studying permit. Because basically we talk about all the time PR, strategizing about PR, but actually there are people who come through the study route, finally settle in Canada, and if you don't get it right, which knowing your permit, knowing what you're supposed to do, holding a study permit, you can just derail from the whole thing, and then all the money you've wasted on tuition wouldn't be worthwhile. So this is also like the beginning of strategizing for PR as a student, if that's your goal, is to be in Canada and relocate to get permanent residency in Canada. So I'm just going to introduce myself. This picture is just like, it shows my whole journey. And of course, my name is Mary. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I'm also a registered social worker. I moved to Canada 2019 as an international student. I took social work. So I'm based in Sault Ste. Marie. I went to Algoma University and I took social work in Algoma University. As I said, if your journey is coming through the student route, so I became a PR in 2021, and then I've worked during this period, my stay in Canada, for the whole of 5 years. I've basically worked with newcomers. I've worked with the settlement organization in my community. I've worked with my city, helping newcomers integrate, settle down in Sault Ste. Marie, making Sault Ste. Marie more welcoming and inclusive to diverse populations. And then I became a Canadian citizen. That was July last year. So basically, I'm just trying to tell you that it's possible, even if you're starting your journey or you're already you're thinking of starting your journey or you've started. It's all going to be worthwhile, like knowing the rule. When it comes to immigration, knowledge is always power, right? So I did it, and also you can also do it. So this is just a snapshot of myself and everything, my whole journey in Canada. So this is a table of content. We'll be looking at international student obligations. So we're talking about enrollment, work regulation, authorized leave of study, traveling outside of Canada as an international student, extending your study permit, and then we'll progress to PGWP eligibility, and then strategizing for PR if that is your end goal. So talk about enrollment. So you're coming as a student. The obligation you have is always to be in school. IRCC will say actively pursue your studies. So if you're in Canada as a student, that's your primary aim of being in Canada. So you can be a worker, you can be anything other than a student. So you have to be enrolled. And how do they look at enrollment? You're either a full-time or a part-time student. So this is how IRCC defines enrollment. However, just be mindful that with the part-time, it comes to play when you're applying for PGWP. So even though they said you can be enrolled as a full-time or part-time, be mindful that IRCC, one of the requirements for PGWP is being a full-time student. The only time IRCC will exempt you from being a part-time student is in your final year. That's the only exemption to being a part-time student, because most people are done with their coursework, so they just have 1 or 2 courses. So in your final year, you can be a part-time student. But being a full-time student to also differ based on programs. So the school I finished from Algoma, you have to take nothing less than 4 courses to be a full-time student. That's 12 credits. Some schools will have a different policy. So always check with your school, check with your international student office, check with your academic advisor to make sure that you are a full-time student. Then some exceptions are like, every semester you have what they call reading week. That's a 1 week free period where you don't have classes. So that classes, of course, there's no expectation for you to go to class because that's like a known break in study. And then summer break. So there are some programs that will have courses and summer breaks. Summer breaks will be considered as a full academic year. And there are some programs that will be only winter and fall semester. So you don't have to take the summer break semester. So during the summer break, you can decide to work as a full-time student if you're in that type of program. But if your program is a program that is considered like summer semester is considered an academic semester, then you have to study during that semester. So you always have to check with your international student team and ask your academic advisor, am I taking my credit? Am I credit worth of a full-time student? My program, can I go on summer break, or do I have to be enrolled for the whole of the year? So you have to find out that from your school, because it differs based on schools and programs. So deferred enrollment. So if you're a student in Canada, you're already taking a, maybe let's just say you came to Canada September, but then you decide to shift your start date of your program. You have to update your DLI, that's your institution, and then get an updated letter of acceptance. So if, let's say, you are supposed to start in September, and then you're not starting September, you tell them that, okay, they should update your letter. They update your letter, and you have a new version of that letter starting in January. If you're already in Canada, note that you have like 150 days as a student. Like, that's the break you're allowed to take in between your studies. So it's either you go back to school in January, so September, October, November, December. So 150 days you can be off, but then you have to go back in January. You can't just say, okay, I'm deferring my school, and then after 150 days, you're not going back to school. So then you either have to change your status after 150 days, either you change to a visitor, or you have to leave Canada, because that's the only break you're allowed. The period is 150 days. And mind you, if you're already in Canada and you are deferring your program, you cannot work during that period, because you're not doing study. Your study, the ability for you to work as a student is tied to your study. Always remember that. So if you're deferring, you have 150 days. That is what is required. If you're extending more than 150 days, you either have to change your status to a visitor, or you have to leave Canada. And also keep IRCC informed, because you told IRCC you're coming as a student. IRCC had it that you're studying, but if you decide to defer, you have to you have to contact your school, update your acceptance letter. They give you a new acceptance letter, and then also inform IRCC. So, as I mentioned, your ability to work as a student is tied to you being, your ability to work as a student is tied to you studying as a student. So, before we know that students can work for 20 hours per week, but the recent update is now as of 8th of November, students can work for 24 hours a week. So this work is called like off campus. If you're working off campus, your employer is not in your campus, then you can work for 24 hours per week as of November 8th, 2024. And then you can only start working if your program starts. So let's say your program is starting September, you had your visa, everything approved, and you came to Canada, let's say June. You can't just start working in June. You have to wait till your program starts in September, and then you begin working that September. Then working on campus, for on-campus job, like all these research assistants, library attendants, gym, working in the gym, all those, like working on campus generally, you have unlimited hours to work. So you don't have an hour cap. You don't have to work for 24 hours a week. You can work for 40. You can work for how many hours you choose to in a week. So far, it's on-campus job. So there are some students that choose to combine working on campus and off campus. So if you're working, let's say you have two jobs, you have a job on campus. On campus, of course, as I said, you can work a lot of hours on campus. But then if you have an off-campus job, then you can only work for 24 hours per week. So in combination, yeah. So here is working eligibility requirements. So for you to work as a student in Canada, for you to have that 24 hours to work as a student in Canada, you have to be a full-time student. So you have to be a full-time student to work for that 24 hours per week. You only have to be a part-time student when you're in your final year. So if you're in your final semester, then you can still work for that 24 hours a week, because I told you in the initial slide that IRCC recognize part-time students in their final semester. So if you're in your final semester and you're working for that 24 hours, you're not breaching IRCC rules and regulation. But let's say you're in your first year and you're now a part-time student. So then you're not only breaching IRCC rule, but then you can't work according to IRCC rules and regulation. For you to start working, you have to start studying. And as a newcomer in Canada, for anybody to work in Canada, you have to have a SIN number. So if you're a visitor in Canada, you don't get access to SIN number. You can't have a SIN number. But if you're a student, if you're a worker, if you're a PR, you have to have SIN number. So that's one of the first things when you arrive Canada, you have to do. So authorized leave from study. So as a student, we understand our life happen. RSCC knows that life happens. So there are things that may warrant you to, to say, okay, I need to take care of myself. I need to look at my mental health. I need to travel home for this emergency. But then what is considered an authorized leave? So for you to take an authorized leave, it has to be authorized from your university, as the name implies. Your school have to be aware. It's not that you're just taking your bag and then booking the next flight and traveling. No. Your school, you have to have a formal letter. Please don't just do phone call. It's always good to have it in writing, emails, because maybe you want to extend your study tomorrow or do anything. You have that backup proof, the trail of email to show that, okay, you actually got an authorized leave from your school is in the picture. So there are situations, reasons like medical reasons, pregnancy, family emergency, death, illness, and then you have to travel. You can only take 150 days off your program. If you take more than 150 days, then you're considered not actively pursuing your study. So 150 days, and during those days, let's just say, for example, you took sick leave of study because maybe you have a mental health, depression, and all those stuff. You can't work. So because the aim is that you need to take time off for yourself, so you can't work as you're taking that 150 days. Then you have to reach out to your academic advisor, reach out to your international student office just for them to have everything approved before you can actually take the leave of absence from your study. So traveling outside of Canada. So we talked about taking leave of absence. So let's say you took a leave, something happened back home, or you want to go for something urgent, and you'll definitely live in Canada. So for you to leave Canada, you need a TRV, so a temporary resident visa. So a study permit is not a travel document. I've had clients who went to the airport, they traveled out of Canada, because traveling, nobody's going to tell you, oh, you don't have this, you don't have this. You're free to travel, you travel. But when you're trying to board the flight, maybe from your home country back to Canada, they'll be like, where is your visa? That's when you now need a visa. A visa is what allows you go in and out of the country. For some countries, they use ETA, the electronic travel authorization. For some countries, you need to get a visa. So this is a picture of a study permit. So a study permit is what is printed out when you arrive at the port of entry. This is what they will give you as your study permit. The study permit, as the name implies, allow you to be in Canada to study and work. So there are situations whereby your visa may be expired, but your study permit is still active. So let's say when you apply for your visa, you had 3 years on your passport, because they can only give you the duration of your permit based on your visa. So the expiry date of your passport. So let's say your passport has 3 years left, and then you apply for your study permit, but your course is 4 years. So they will give you the day your passport is expiring. That's in 3 years' time. So your permit will be reading that same date. But however, we know that you are in a 4-year program. So definitely at some point you will want to extend your study permits. So when you apply for extension of study permit, IRCC will send you this paper, the permit, but then your passport is expired. So you're not sending anything with your visa again, it's just your passport. But then if you want to travel out of the country, you have to renew your passport and then apply for a TRV, so another visa to be stamped on your passport, because that is what will allow you go in and out of Canada. So this visa, the stamp on your passport, needs to be active. It needs to be reading 2025, 2026, If it's not, then you have to apply for a new one. The processing time is pretty low because you're applying from inside of Canada, not outside of Canada. So the processing time is pretty fast to hear back from IRCC. So extending your study permit. So if you are in a program, as I just gave that example, and you need to extend your study permit because you got a shorter time due to your passport expiry, please extend your study permit 30 days, at least 30 days before that permit expires. So if your study permit is reading expiry in March 2025, from February, you should start thinking, how am I going to start applying for that extension? So at least 30 days before the expiry of that permit. And also people that come with family, there are cases whereby the primary applicant, so the person studying, just extends his own permit and leaves the other people. So if you're coming as a group, as a family, you guys have the same validity date of your permit, because it's based on the primary applicant. So if the primary applicant study permit is expiring, the wife, the children, whether they are minors, they should also extend. You are extending for not just yourself, but your family. And then have a valid passport. You cannot get a permit without having a valid passport. So you have to have a valid passport, so you can get that period of extension. And also to note, with regarding the passports, most times, some countries, like, they have that backlog in processing their passports. So always note that when I was a temporary resident, like an international student, I just marked on my calendar when my passport was expiring. So if you don't have a passport that is as long as 10 years or 5 years, if your passport just have 2 years, 3 years left, I think the best practice is to mark that date in your calendar. And before the expiry date, start reaching out to your embassy or the processing center at least 6 months or 3 months before that passport expires, just because some embassies takes time, like my embassy, Nigerian embassy, it takes time, to get an appointment. It takes time, to go to Ottawa to do everything. So you don't want to be out of status. So always keep that date in mind when your passport is expiring, so that you can be proactive, like, book appointment, renew it, and then within 30 days of the expiry of your permit, you can now apply for a new study permit extension. In other cases, there are people whereby once you know that maybe you've not gotten an appointment, let's say you book an appointment and they gave you September. We know September is far and your permit is expiring in June. What you can do is that in August, you can still apply for a study permit extension and then write a letter of explanation in your application telling IRCC that, hey, I applied for my passport and I haven't heard back. Here are documentations that I've booked appointment and I'm waiting to be called by my embassy or consulate or whatever, to be called for that appointment, as opposed to just waiting for your permit and everything to just expire because you're waiting for an appointment. You understand? You can apply with still an expired passport, but then just explaining to IRCC, this is where I'm applying with an expired passport because I'm waiting appointment. I've booked appointment and I'm taking all the steps to ensure that I get my passport renewed, if that makes sense. So you can apply with an expired passport. If you apply before if you apply before your permit expires, as I said, you have to apply 30 days. So if you're within this 30 days range and before your permit expires, you can continue schooling before IRCC get back to you. The processing time for study permit is around like 8 weeks in Canada. So you don't have to take a pause from your studies. You can still keep schooling pending when IRCC approves your application. So far, you applied before your permit expires. So if your permit expires and then you apply after your permit expires, you have to stop schooling because then you're out of status. So this is just like a recap of what I've said for you to pay attention, because this is like the common ways international students get in trouble, just like maybe they don't approve their PGWP if they work more than 24 hours. Those are things IRCC may flag in your application. Arriving school without studying. So their students, they just come to Canada, they arrive, they check in as a student, get their permit, and then they just don't study. So always remember that as a student, your primary aim of being in Canada is for that study purpose. And then you have to always fulfill that you are actively enrolled in school. Somebody may ask, okay, how would IRCC know? So when you're doing your PGWP application, IRCC will ask you to include your school transcript. And transcript is just like the footprint. It captures your academic activities. So it will show which semester you were enrolled part-time, which semester you were not even enrolled, how many courses you took, and everything, your grades, it will all be in the transcript. So that's one way IRCC will know if you took the semester off or if you're not even schooling at all, when it comes to that PGWP time when you have to put in those transcripts in. And then Don't work more than 24 hours if you're working off campus. Being a part-time student is another thing. You can only be a part-time student in your final year, and then exceeding the 150 days. So always try, if you're deferring your enrollment, be within 150 days. If you're taking a leave of studies, let it be within 150 days. Let it not exceed 150 days. So now this is PGWP. So when you're done with your school in Canada, if you did a program from 8 months and from 8 months to 1 year, you get like 1 year PGWP. If you do a program for 2 years and above, you get like if you do a program from like 18 months and above, you get like 3 years post-graduation work permit. This post-graduation work permit allows you to be in Canada to get, Canadian work experience that will help you towards PR. So it's like a step-by-step kind of thing that you're building. So we had IRCC did like recent changes to PGWP. So now, before any program you take in Canada, you'll be eligible for post-graduation work permit. However, that is not the case. As of November 1st, we have something they call the field of study. So if you're taking a bachelor, a master's, or doctoral degree, you can, any field you take is eligible for PGWP. That means you can get PGWP. If you take music, healthcare, it doesn't matter. So far as a bachelor, master's, and doctoral, you can always get PGWP. There's a new requirement, that is language. Before, that was not a requirement. Once you graduate, you just have to apply without having language. But now, as of November 1st, you have to have your language in when you're submitting your application. So for a bachelor, master's, and doctoral degree, you have to have nothing less than a CLB7 in all areas. So in listening, writing, speaking, and reading, you have to have nothing less than a CLB7. Then other university programs, that is like postgraduate degree, that could be certificate, that could be postgraduate diploma, that could be a diploma. Some universities offer diploma. So anything that is out of bachelor, master's, or doctoral degree, you also need, so far you is from a university, you have to have nothing less than a CLB7 in all 4 areas. And then this degree must be in a field of study. So I'll go to the field of studies to show you what are the field of study that are required to be eligible for PGWP. And then if you go into a college, you have to have nothing less than CLB5 in your language test when you're applying for PGWP. And then you also have to meet the field of study requirements. So you're exempted from field of study when you're doing bachelor, master's, PhD, and you have to meet field of study if you're doing anything other than those what I mentioned. So these are the field of study: agriculture, agri-food. Education was recently added December 17th, healthcare, STEM, trades, and transport. So these are the field. These are very, very broad field. IRCC has done a great job by listing all the, like, for example, let's say in healthcare, there are so many fields under healthcare. So when you go to IRCC page, you see all the fields broken down, and they have their CIP codes. So those are, like, in healthcare, you can have nursing, dentist, PSW, different fields under those. So they've broken it down. But always check with your schools, because even though you have those fields listed on IRCC website, your school may be trying to register those programs with, to get with IRCC to make those programs eligible. So the fact that you're seeing a program eligible on IRCC website, check with your school to be sure that, oh, I'm going for PSW. Okay, is Sioux College having PSW registered? Is Sioux College having civil engineering registered? So in as much you check on IRCC page, also double check with your college to be sure that that program you're going for will be eligible for that PGWP, because that's the main thing after you graduate. So the general requirement is that you have to complete your program in a university or college or whatever they call it, DLI, designated learning institution. So just to note, there are some schools that when you complete your program, you can't get DLI. There are also some programs like that. So always check with your university. Ask them, I'm going for this course. I want to take nursing. Is your school, you can check. IRCC has a way of listing schools that are DLI. whereby you can get PGWP, and those schools that you can't get PGWP for the programs, always check with your school. Make sure that the program you're going for is post-graduation work permit eligible. And then maintain full-time status as a student. So even though IRCC said you can be part-time, full-time, but when it comes to PGWP, they all want to see in your transcript that you've been a full-time student, except in that final semester when you're allowed to take, you're allowed to be a part-time student. So that is the only exemption. And this will always show in your transcripts when you're a full-time and when you're part-time. Apply for PGWP within 180 days after graduation. So this graduation doesn't mean convocation. This graduation means after you've received your final grades, or once your university or college has sent you the letter of completion that you're done with, they've checked everything, you're done with this program, you're good. Convocation is usually in the summer, in June, but before then, schools, once the results are all in, they always send a letter of completion to show that you've completed their academic requirement for this program. So once you get that letter from your school, you stop working. As I said, your study is tied to work. So you stop working as soon as you get that letter stating that you've completed your academic requirement. The next thing to do now is to apply for PGWP. Mind you, PGWP, you have to apply within 180 days after getting that letter. Also note that outside of that application, so once the school has sent you, hey, you've graduated, you have 90 days validity, your study permit, even if your study permit is there till, because they don't give it exactly when your program ends, they give it with a few extra months. So let's say you finish your program in December, your study permit could be expiring in June or March. That's what is printed out. But then you completed your study in December. So after you get that letter that, hey, you're done with your course, you've graduated and whatnot, you have 90 days validity of that study permit. So after 90 days, whether you apply for PGWP or not, that study permit is invalid because you've completed your study. So within that 90 days, what they're asking you is that before your study permit is invalid, put in your PGWP before that 90 days. So even though you have 180 days, which is a blanket, put in your application before that 90 days, that's before your study permit expires. If you put in your application before that 90 days, so before your study permit expires, once you apply for PGWP, you get, they call it an acknowledgement of receipt. So IRCC will say, okay, they've received your application is processing, but while your application is processing, you can continue working. So you have the opportunity to keep working. But if you put in your application late and then 90 days expires, then you can't work. Even IRCC is processing your application. And right now, the processing time for PGWP is around like 164 days. That's like 4 months, 5 months thereabout. That's a processing time for PGWP. So if you want to work within that period, because you already graduated, everything is already in place. So if you want to work, you just have to apply for PGWP as early as possible. So as I mentioned, right now, you need to have language tests, these language requirements. So you can start working on your PGWP application on the IRCC portal. And then once you have your language test, you now plug it in and submit. Don't wait, okay, my appointment is September. I have to book an appointment before I can start applying, it just takes time. So since you know all the requirements now, factor in, okay, when am I going to, okay, I'm graduating December, okay, how early can I get an appointment for language? Factor that in. How early can I submit? That way you are within that 90 days, so your study permit doesn't expire. So this brings us here now to strategy, PR strategy as an international student. So after you get your PGWP, the next thing is you can work, you can get your Canadian work experience and all those stuff. And the next thing is to start planning for your PR. So as a student, as I said, they are all building blocks. You don't just wait to start planning for your PR when you get PGWP, because some people get 1 year PGWP. And before you know, 1 year just breeze in and breeze out, and you've not gotten a draw. There's no application on for PR. You don't even have a PR strategy. So you can start this building block as you study during your PGW process. The first step is comply with your study permit condition. As you can see, everything is linked. So if you take part-time or you worked above 24 hours, it could lead to you not getting that PGWP, which can affect you not becoming a PR because then you don't have Canadian experience. So the first thing is to comply with your study permit condition. Make sure you're doing everything right according to IRCC books. Get involved in your community. So where you study, be involved. They have a lot of student events going on. You have the student union, get involved. You have newcomers organization. They do a lot of activity in the summer. Get involved because that's how you meet people. And sometimes jobs in Canada is not all about applying. It's all about knowing somebody that can put in a word. That word of mouth is very, very effective. So get involved, get to meet people. When you meet people, you get to interact, of course, share your skills with them. And then there's a job opening, they can just refer you, okay, I am, this job is opening, apply for it, that kind of thing. Gain Canadian experience. So be it summer breaks, you don't want to just spend your summer traveling. You want to also apply for jobs. If you're a student in school, they always post summer student position. Like now is the time for summer student position. Ontario right now is hiring summer students in different government fields. Check in your local community, check within employers in your community. Right now, they are looking for summer students. That way you can be learning the Canadian culture and also getting that Canadian work experience. Some courses may have co-op attached to it. So co-op is when you have like 3 months to go and, work within an organization just to get that practical hands-on experience. Is part of your program too. So if you have the opportunity for co-op internship, go for it and make sure, you are building your skills and your resume. Then you can create a profile as a student. You don't have to wait till you graduate. Under the Express Entry, there are 3 programs whereby you have the Canadian Experience class. For Canadian Experience class, work experience as a student will not count to Canadian Experience class. Your work experience for Canadian Experience class start counting during your PGWP. So for that, you may not really qualify until you have that 1 year solid Canadian work experience. However, there are programs like the Federal Skilled Worker Program. That one, if you have experience from your home country, you can apply for that, there are matured students that come to Canada that already have 10 years, 5 years worth of experience from home country. With that, you can just be in the pool, and then you can update your profile once you've graduated from a Canadian university to give you that Canadian education. You never can tell when a draw will happen and your point may just, meet with your CRS score may meet with the draw of IRCC. So it's always good if you have experience back home. Try to create that profile so at least you are eligible for that skilled worker program, and then you never can tell when a draw will come up. So aim for job in tier 0, 1, 2, 3. Why I say aim for job, like jobs, when it comes to PR, there are some jobs that can qualify for PR and there are some jobs that can't qualify for PR. So something like Express Entry is only for job in tier 0, 1, 2, 3. You understand? So you don't want to have a job whereby when it comes to PR, the job is paying your bills, but then can't give you that PR. So most pathways will require tier 0, 1, 2, 3. We have rural programs, which regardless of the tier still goes, but then just aim for tier 0, 1, 2, 3 because it keeps your option, broader as opposed to, having a tier that maybe tier 4 and 5, whereby it doesn't fit to every category of federal programs when you're applying for Express Entry. And then the last thing is always seek personalized and professional guidance from a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Just because everybody's situation is unique. Some people come to Canada with work experience, they have a master's from back home. So their point is already adding up, even if they have a 1 year PGWP. And there are people that just come, straight off high school without work experience, So the advice I'm going to give somebody that has, work experience and a master's, I will tell them go and create a profile. But a person with just from high school directly, I wouldn't say go create a profile because then I know that you have to have that 1,560 work experience to even qualify for a pathway. So everybody have different unique situations, and then that's where an expert will examine your situation, assess you, and advise you based on your own situation. So not just generalized advice. And then why do you want to work with an RCIC? So Canada has a lot of pathways, like over 100, federal, provincial, rural. They are always bringing out new pathways to meet labor demands. So you want to always look at the one that kind of fits your skills. So and your requirements and what you already have. So something like federal skilled worker require a CLB 7, but rural program requires CLB 5. So which one will you go when you know your language score? So you have to meet an expert to advise you. Okay, maybe go for a rural program because maybe that the requirements are much more lower than going for express entry whereby you have high draws, all those kind of stuff. So you have to like, you can figure it out yourself. I'm not saying you can't do it, but then sometimes it's always good to meet a professional, especially with how the changes like are coming back to back from IRCC. And then RSCCs, they are trained to know the Canadian law, they know the process, and the process is ever changing. If you all follow Canadian immigration policies and all, like today is something, tomorrow is another thing. So you don't rely on yesterday's information. You always have to check to make sure that that information is the same today. And then we, of course, adhere to the strict code of conduct. Um, how do you know a regulated Canadian immigration consultant? So a regulated Canadian immigration consultant are people who have gone through the whole immigration process, they know the rules, and there is a college. So there's a way you can go to check if the person I'm working with is a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. And I'm just going to show you because I know that a lot of people back home in Canada, they're falling, victims of fraudulent people claiming to be experts while they are not. So I'm just going to show you if it's helpful for somebody. If some people already know it, that's fine. But then just for you to know who you're working with, you can always verify, check if they've breached the rules. There's always a section that shows if they've ever violated the college regulations and standard of practice. Their disciplinary action is going to be stated. You can always check if that person is in good standing. So it just puts you at rest that, okay, I'm working with this person and this person is 100% knows what they are doing in their field. So I'm just going to share my screen to show you that. And then I think I'm almost done. I'll open it up for question and answer. So just going to give me a minute. Let me share my screen here. So stop sharing this. So I'm just going to share now. So this is it here, where you can check if anybody is regulated. And then if you just type, let me just use myself, my last name, and then find. So this is me. If you're working with anybody, you can always check to know if that person is regulated or not. If you click on select, you see discipline. If there's any way the person has breached the college standard of practice, it will always show here that the person has, like, the person is suspended, the person is on probation, the person is on blah, 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 blah. It will always state. If you want to check if I have like a company, if it's registered and all those, you have just click on licensee detail. And then you see everything about me, like when I got licensed, when I started, my location, my email, the name of my firm. So everything is pretty much stated here, just in case whoever you decide to pick as your consultant for you to verify. So I'm just going to stop sharing now and then open it up for question and answer. If you have any question related to Canadian immigration, feel free to yeah, raise your hand, ask your question, whatever works for you. Okay. Yeah, let's go. Petal.
Hi. Oh, first of all, let me thank you so much for such an informative session. Um, I want to ask about the part where you said I can create a profile because I have a lot of work experience back home.
Mm-hmm.
So I just go on the website and like sign up pretty much. I
Yeah.
already did my language test as well too. So
Mm.
does it ask, so it asks for stuff and you just pretty much click what you have and then it will show you how many points you have? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So before you create, right, you want to know there's the CRS calculator whereby you can just run through your score to see where you at. Major thing is that you have to have that language, which you already do. Then your education, you have to have it evaluated by WES or any other evaluation body.
Yeah, I got
Once
that done too.
yeah, once those two are pretty much done, yes, you can create. Just go express entry type and then create your profile. Then create your profile. Once you create your profile, you see your score, and then you are in the pool. Technically, you have to submit the profile you've created. That way, you are in the pool, and if there's a draw that meets your CRS score, you get an invitation to apply.
So that leads to my other question. Thank you for answering that. My
Mhm.
other question, so can I get a draw while being an active student?
Yes.
Oh, that's nice. I didn't know that.
That's if you qualify for the federal skill worker program. As I said, you won't qualify for the Canadian experience class
Mhm.
because you don't have Canadian experience. But
Right,
yes,
right.
for federal skill worker program, even employment you do as a student counts towards express entry for that program. So what they need is having those experience outside of Canada or in Canada. Then once you get an IT as a student, yeah, you just apply. People get their PR as a student, very, very possible, 100%.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'll just have to try and find my way around the site to do it then.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Angelina?
Hey Mary, this session was amazing. Really had fun learning this and kind of a recap for what I knew when I was a student. So my
Mm-hmm.
sister was visiting me, and while she was still on a visitor visa, we applied for her study permit for an application for Sault College. So will this application be considered an in Canada application?
No.
It
So
won't be.
yeah, so the rule is that you have to apply from your home country. So
Mhm.
even if you're applying for study visa and you're inside Canada, technically you have to use the outside of Canada application, the IMM form, the IRCC form, and apply. So you have to go out to get your permit. You can't get your permit in Canada. You have to come back and get your permit at the port of entry. But then you can't get your permit in Canada, even if you are in Canada.
Oh, that was going to be my other question. So, like, if she's already here, does she have to exit Canada and then enter again?
Yes.
Okay. And does she need a pal?
Yes, she would need a PAL. Yeah. So
She
that's
would.
before you even process visa. Yeah, the school, once you pay your tuition, the school should give you PAL,
Mhm.
because that is required for your visa process. Yes.
So, where would her passport be going for the stamping
Her
of the
home
visit?
country.
Would it?
Yes.
Because I was advised that it would be like in Canada at any of the locations in Canada, maybe Ottawa or wherever it is getting stamped. So it won't be here and it would be in back home country.
Yeah, because you're applying, if you're applying, they're sending your application. So you're putting your, for example, let's say Nigeria now, they process our application in Kenya. So that's your application is going to that processing center. When you just put automatic, once you put your country of residence, it's going to that center. And that's why you have to get your passport when you're coming. Like you can't get it in Canada. No.
Okay. So for her case, I think her current residence was listed as my address and her permanent address was listed as back in India. So what happens then?
So
Because
did
she,
you use the in Canada application form or the outside of Canada application form?
I think it was the outside Canada application
Yeah.
form.
So if you use the outside of Canada, you have to get it. It's just like super visa, right? Like you can't get people rare situation, but like when my mom got super visa, we had to send like she had to go back, send her passport through Nigeria, all that route to
Mhm.
get the passport stamped before she could come. And she was in Canada when she got the that her passport is ready and all. Yes.
Okay, that is
Mhm.
interesting to know. And another question I had was about study permit extension. One of a person that I know is on an academic probation. for some reason. And if
Okay.
they need to apply for an extension, but the college is now not willing to provide them the letter that they are in continuation of study, even though they are currently enrolled in a semester. So would they be able to just submit their application without the letter? Would it proceed, or is it absolutely necessary?
The letter from the school stating that they are enrolled.
Yes.
Yeah, it's important because that's why you're requesting an extension, right? Like you can't get an extension if you can't prove that you're currently in the school and you still have courses to do. So
Mhm.
getting that letter has to come from the school. The school has to give that letter for you to apply. So it's something you have to figure out with the school, but then it's very important because even on the forms, like when you're submitting the application, there's a section that, when you're uploading the documents, there's a section that will ask for letter of enrollment, and that portion is like you have to upload the letter coming from Agloma Yusu College that this student is a student. Yes.
Okay, okay, makes sense. And if they were to withdraw from the said current course and just go for a trade course for 1 year and just take the credit for this 1 year current course, as I think arts or accounts. So in that case, future, would they be getting the PGWP for 1 year or 3 years?
If they've not gotten the PGWP before, they will definitely get it. But now normally what they do with PGWP is that they combine courses. So if you do a 1 year, they combine it to give you 2 years. But if you didn't complete that course you're doing and you just complete the 1 year, you get only the 1 year because it's based on the completion, right? Like as I said, they'll ask for a letter of completion. If you
Okay.
don't have a letter of completion from the former program and you just have that one letter of completion stating you did like a 1 year course, then you get 1 year.
Yeah, but like if that course is from the current guidelines, if it's not in one of the priority STEM courses or anything, and it's just a commerce course, then would that course still be eligible for PGWP?
No, if it's not in the field of study, you don't get PGWP as of November 1st. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that those were my only questions. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Mary. This was really useful.
No problem, Angelina. Any more questions? Olusola, welcome. Florida, welcome. Do you guys have any questions? It's almost time though.
I'm just excited.
You're just excited. Well, I'm
I'm
also
just
excited for you.
excited. I'm excited because I learned so much. Like, coming on initially, I said, oh, well, I'm already there, but I'm like, no, there's always something to learn. And as you said, knowledge is power. So, you can look out for me. If I have any questions, I'll hit you up on Instagram like I normally do. I appreciate you.
Mhm.
Thank you. And, just for you always being so willing to help. And you do not gatekeep, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Petal. I appreciate you too. Thank you. Um, any more question? If there's no question, then I'll allow you enjoy your beautiful weekend and call it a day. Okay, thank you all for joining us. Thank you. I really appreciate you creating time despite your schedule to be here. Thank you, and I wish you all the best in your Canadian journey, be it study, PR, whatever you're working towards. I'm rooting for you, and it will definitely come to pass. Okay, have a good weekend. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.